The porcelain mask felt like a cage against my face, but it was better than the alternative. Better than the stairs. I shouldn't have come to the lunar claiming. Every unmated Omega in the territory was required to attend. Some archaic law nobody had bothered to update in 3 centuries. But I'd planned to slip in, let the court scribes mark my attendance, and disappear before the actual mating dances began, before the alphas started circling. That was the plan. But plans, I'd learned, had a way of catching fire. All Omegas to the center floor. The herald's voice boomed through the gilded ballroom, and my stomach dropped somewhere into my borrowed shoes. By order of King Liam Silverheart, tonight's claiming will proceed traditionally. No departures until the final bell. Oh no. Around me, the other Omegas tittered with excitement, smoothing their gowns, adjusting their carefully styled hair. They'd spent weeks preparing for this night. I'd spent weeks praying I'd never have to endure it. 3 years I'd successfully avoided the lunar claiming. 3 years since the fire. This mask had cost me 2 months' wages from my transcription work. Plain white porcelain, elegant enough not to draw attention, covering everything from my forehead to my upper lip. I'd painted it myself with delicate gold filigree, trying to make it look like a choice rather than a necessity. Like I was mysterious instead of ruined. My best friend Pippa grabbed my elbow, her own face flushed with anticipation. "Did you hear? The Alpha King himself is participating this year. First time in a decade." Her eyes sparkled. "They say he's finally ready to choose a mate." Liam Silverheart, the controversial king who'd taken the throne after his father's sudden death and had spent years trying to hold together a fracturing realm. They said he was ruthless when he needed to be. They also said he was devastatingly handsome. "Lucky us," I muttered, trying to calculate how quickly I could reach the servants' exit. But guards had already positioned themselves at every door, and the crowd was pressing forward, carrying me with it whether I wanted to go or not. The ballroom was a symphony of desperation dressed up as destiny. Crystal chandeliers caught the light of 1,000 candles. The air was thick with competing perfumes, and the musky scent of alpha pheromones. Somewhere, musicians began to play. And then I felt it, a prickling awareness at the base of my skull, like lightning about to strike. Someone was watching me. Before we continue, can you comment where you're watching from? Now back to our story. The sensation crawled down my spine like ice water. I'd learned to trust my instincts after the fire. They'd kept me alive when the smoke was choking the air from my lungs. They'd told me which doorway wouldn't collapse, which corridor still had oxygen, which child I could still save. Now those same instincts were screaming at me to run. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd of perfumed Omegas and preening Alphas. There, across the sea of silk and desperation, I found him. King Liam Silverheart stood on the raised platform reserved for the highest-ranking Alphas, but he wasn't surveying the crowd the way the others were. He was staring directly at me. His eyes, pale, gray, almost silver in the candlelight, were fixed on my masked face with an intensity that made my breath catch. He was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 30, with dark hair that fell across his forehead, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore black, which should have made him fade into the background, but instead, it made him look like a void in the universe, pulling everything toward him. "Clara?" Pippa's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need to leave," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was too late. The king was moving. He didn't rush. The crowd simply parted for him, Alphas and Omegas alike stepping back as he descended from the platform and began walking across the ballroom floor. Toward me. "Oh God," Pippa breathed. "He's coming over here. Clara, the king is—" "I know." My voice sounded strangled even to my own ears. Every survival instinct I possessed told me to bolt, but my legs had turned to stone. I could only watch as Liam Silverheart closed the distance between us, his gaze never wavering from my face. from my mask. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell him, something that made my Omega hindbrain sit up and take notice despite my terror. Close enough that I could see the faint scar on his left eyebrow, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Kings didn't ask questions. "I don't dance, Your Majesty." I was proud of how steady my voice came out, proud that I didn't let it shake even though my hands were trembling. His mouth twitched. It might have been amusement. "Everyone dances at the lunar claiming. It's tradition. I prefer to observe, and I prefer to know why you're hiding." The words hung in the air between us, sharp as broken glass. Around us, I could feel the weight of 100 stares. The other Omegas watching with envy and confusion. Pippa gripping my elbow so hard it would bruise. "I'm not hiding," I lied. Liam took another step forward, close enough now that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Close enough that his scent wrapped around me like a physical thing, making my knees weak. "Yes, you are, and I want to know what you're hiding from." His hand rose toward my face. Everything after that happened too fast. I saw his fingers reaching for the edge of my mask. Saw the moment he made contact with the porcelain. Felt the slight tug as he began to lift it away. I should have stopped him. Should have stepped back or slapped his hand away. Done anything except stand there frozen like prey before a predator. My mask came free. For one heartbeat, there was only silence. The ballroom held its breath. Liam's eyes widened as he took in my face, the scar that ran down my left cheek and jaw, the way the scar tissue pulled at the corner of my mouth. The fire had been thorough in its destruction. Then he gasped. It was soft, barely audible, but I heard it. Everyone heard it. And in that sound, I heard everything I'd spent 3 years trying to avoid. Recognition, shock, pity. "You," he breathed. "It's you. You're—" I didn't let him finish. The survival instinct that had frozen now snapped back with a vengeance. I spun on my heel and ran. "Wait!" His voice cracked across the ballroom like a whip, but I was already moving, shoving through the crowd of stunned onlookers. Pippa called my name. Someone tried to grab my arm, but I twisted free. All I could think about was getting out, getting away, getting somewhere I could breathe without everyone's eyes on my face. The ballroom doors were guarded, but I didn't care. I hit them at a full sprint, breaking through before the startled sentries could react. Behind me, I heard shouting. I didn't stop to look back. The palace corridors blurred past me. My borrowed shoes slipped on marble floors, but I kicked them off and kept running barefoot. Down one hallway, then another. Past tapestries and portraits of dead kings. Past servants who pressed themselves against the walls in shock. I could still feel the mask in my hand. No, wait, the mask wasn't in my hand. I looked down and saw only a single shard of painted porcelain, the rest of it lost somewhere in my flight. It must have shattered when I pulled away from him. The fragment bore part of the gold filigree I'd so carefully painted, the delicate swirls now broken, incomplete. Just like me. The cool night air hit my face as I burst through a side entrance into the palace gardens. My lungs burned. My feet were bleeding. But I didn't stop running until I reached the outer walls, until I found a servant's gate that some careless guard had left unlocked, until I was out in the city streets where the darkness could swallow me whole. Only then did I let myself collapse against a wall, chest heaving, tears streaming down my scarred cheek. He'd recognized me. After 3 years of hiding, of rebuilding a small, quiet life where nobody knew what I'd done or who I'd been, Liam Silverheart had looked at my face and known exactly who I was. The hero, Omega. The one who'd saved 8 lives the night someone tried to assassinate him. The one who'd pulled his sister from the flames while her own skin melted. The one who'd disappeared into the night while they were still counting the dead and never looked back. I didn't go home that night. Home was the first place they'd look, and even in my panic-addled state, I knew the king wouldn't stop searching. I'd seen it in his eyes in that split second before I ran. Determination, recognition, and something else I didn't want to name. Instead, I found my way to Pippa's apartment in the artisan quarter. She wouldn't be back until the claiming officially ended at dawn, which gave me a few hours to think. To plan. To figure out how to disappear again, permanently this time. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me and sank onto her threadbare couch, still clutching the mask fragment. In the lamplight, the gold paint caught and shimmered. I'd been so proud of this mask. Had thought it would let me pass through the claiming unnoticed. Just another faceless Omega fulfilling her legal obligation. Instead, it had drawn the attention of the one person I'd spent all these years avoiding. The fire had happened on the winter solstice 3 years ago. I'd been working at the Moonrise Sanctuary, a housing complex for Omegas who had nowhere else to go. Orphans, mostly, and a few adults who'd fled abusive packs. It was quiet work, administrative, and I'd been good at it, good at keeping my head down and my life small. Then someone had decided that was the perfect night to kill the king's heir. Liam hadn't been king yet then. He'd been the controversial crown prince, the one who wanted to reform pack law, who'd made enemies of half the council with his progressive ideas. His father, the old king, had been traditional, brutal. When he'd died suddenly, poison, though they'd called it heart failure, Liam had taken the throne and immediately started making changes. Changes that made powerful people very angry. The assassins had chosen the Moonrise Sanctuary because they knew Liam's sister volunteered there, knew he visited her, knew the building was old and would burn fast. They'd set the fire during dinner service when everyone was gathered in the dining hall. I still remembered the smell of smoke, the screams, the way the flames had seemed to come from everywhere at once. The exits had been blocked. The windows barred for safety were suddenly cages. I'd gotten 12 people out, lost 4, carried Liam's sister through a wall of fire because it was the only way left. The burns had been agonizing, the skin grafts worse. But the nightmares were what really wouldn't heal, the dreams where I could still hear the 4 I hadn't saved, could still smell burning flesh, could still feel the weight of a child's body going limp in my arms. So when they'd called me a hero, when they'd said the king wanted to meet me, to thank me, to give me some kind of medal or title, or God knew what else, I'd done the only sensible thing. I'd vanished. Changed my name from Eva to Clara. Moved to a different district. Found work as a transcriptionist, where I could labor in silence and solitude. Built a life so small and quiet that no one would ever look at me and think, hero. Until tonight. The door burst open just as the first rays of dawn were painting the sky pink. Pippa stood in the doorway, still in her ball gown, her carefully styled hair now a mess. Her eyes were wild. "Thank God," she gasped, stumbling inside. "I've been looking everywhere. Clara, what the hell happened? 1 minute you were standing there, the next the king was holding your mask and you were gone, and the entire ballroom was in chaos. Did he send people after me? Did he... Clara, he practically tore the palace apart. He had guards searching every room, every corridor. He's been questioning people all night about who you are, where you live." She collapsed next to me on the couch. Half the city knows by now that King Liam is obsessed with finding the scarred Omega who ran from the claiming. My stomach turned to ice. "Pippa, I need to leave the city." "What? No, you need to go to him." "Are you insane? He's the king, Clara. You can't just run from the king. And besides," she hesitated, biting her lip, "I heard what people were saying, about how he looked at you." "I know." My words came out flat. "He knows who I am. Who you..." Understanding dawned in Pippa's eyes. Oh, the fire. You're the one who saved his sister?" I'd never told her. Never told anyone. But there was no point in hiding it now. "He's been looking for you," Pippa said slowly. "I heard rumors. That he'd been searching for the hero Omega, that he felt guilty she'd disappeared. Clara, if he wants to thank you, to reward you, I don't want his gratitude." The words came out sharper than I intended. I don't want his pity, or guilt, or whatever he thinks he owes me. I just want to be left alone. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Because for just a moment, when he'd looked at me after removing the mask, before the gasping, before the recognition, I'd seen something else in his eyes. Something that had made my Omega hindbrain purr with satisfaction, even as my human brain screamed danger. I'd seen desire. I managed to avoid detection for 4 days. 4 days of staying inside Pippa's apartment, of sending her out for supplies, of jumping at every sound in the hallway. 4 days of knowing it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. The wanted posters went up on the 3rd day. Not wanted, exactly. The king was far too savvy for that. But notices seeking information about an Omega seen at the lunar claiming, with a description detailed enough that anyone who'd seen me that night would know exactly who they meant. There was a reward, a substantial one. "This is insane," Pippa said, studying one of the notices she'd torn off a public board. "He's mobilized half the city guard. Clara, people are taking this seriously. The bakery owner on the corner was asking me yesterday if I knew anything about scarred Omegas in the district." "What did you tell him?" "That I minded my own business, same as he should." She crumpled the notice. "But Clara, you can't hide forever. Eventually, someone's going to remember seeing you around here. Eventually?" A knock at the door cut her off. We both froze. Pippa's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that housed mostly artisans and craftspeople. Visitors were rare, especially this late in the evening. The knock came again, firm, patient, inevitable. "Clara." Pippa's voice was barely a whisper. I was already moving, grabbing my cloak, heading for the window that led to the fire escape. But before I could reach it, a voice called through the door. "I know you're in there." Liam's voice, unmistakable, not angry, not commanding, just certain. "I'm alone," he continued. "No guards, no witnesses. I just want to talk." Pippa looked at me, eyes wide. I could run, climb out the window and disappear into the maze of rooftops and alleyways. Buy myself maybe another few days, but I was so tired of running. I nodded at Pippa. She took a shaky breath and opened the door. King Liam Silverheart stood in the hallway wearing civilian clothes, a simple dark coat and trousers that did nothing to diminish his presence. If anything, without the crown and royal regalia, he looked more dangerous, more real. His eyes found mine immediately. That same intensity from the ballroom, but now there was something else beneath it. Relief. "Clara," he said, and hearing my name in his voice did something strange to my chest. "Thank you for not running." "I thought about it," I admitted. A hint of a smile touched his mouth. "I know, that's why I came alone." He glanced at Pippa, who was standing frozen by the door. "May I come in?" It wasn't really a request. He was the king, but he was asking anyway, and that small courtesy made something crack in the walls I'd built around myself. I nodded. Liam stepped inside, and Pippa immediately made herself scarce, retreating to her bedroom with a pointed look at me that said we'd be having a long conversation later. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the king in a tiny apartment that suddenly felt even smaller. "You're a difficult woman to find," Liam said, studying the sparse room. I had my best trackers searching. "Do you know what finally led me here?" I shook my head. He reached into his coat and pulled out a piece of painted porcelain. My mask fragment, the one I'd dropped in my rush to flee. "The paint," he said softly. "It's a very specific mixture. Gold leaf suspended in honey-based medium. Only 3 shops in the city sell it, and only one of them had sold any in the past month." He turned the fragment over in his hands. "The shopkeeper remembered you. Said you were very particular about getting the shade exactly right." that you paid in coins marked with the Transcriptionist Guild seal. My heart sank. I'd been so careful, but not careful enough. From there, it was just a matter of checking which transcriptionists had purchased supplies recently. Your employer was very helpful once I explained I was looking for an Omega who'd fled the claiming. His eyes met mine. He told me you were an excellent worker, quiet, kept to yourself, never missed a deadline. Are you here to arrest me? My voice came out steadier than I felt. For fleeing the claiming? I know it's technically illegal, but arrest you? He looked genuinely shocked. Clara, I'm here to apologize. That stopped me cold. Apologize? For removing your mask without permission, for exposing you in front of the entire court, for causing you to flee in fear. He took a step closer, and I could smell that scent again. Pine, rain, and something wild. I've spent 3 years searching for the Omega who saved my sister's life, who pulled 8 people from a burning building, who disappeared before I could thank her properly. I don't need to be thanked. I know, that's what made you so hard to find. Another step. Do you know what my sister told me about that night? She said you carried her through a wall of fire. Said you were crying, not from pain, but because you couldn't save everyone. Said the last thing you told her before you collapsed was to make sure the children were counted. I remembered. I remembered every second of that night. She wanted to find you, Liam continued. To thank you herself. But you'd vanished. No name, no history. Just a ghost who'd saved lives and then disappeared into smoke. His voice dropped lower. I've thought about you every day. Wondered if you survived the burns. Wondered why you ran. Wondered if I'd ever get the chance to look you in the eye and tell you that you're the bravest person I've never met. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. Just stop. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me except that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time and did what anyone would have done. That's not true, and you know it. Most people would have run away. But you ran toward the fire. And look what it got me. I gestured to my face, to the scars that pulled and twisted my features. I'm not brave. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who got burned and wants to be left alone. Is that really what you want? The question hung between us, and I couldn't answer it, because the truth was complicated. Yes, I wanted to be left alone, but I also wanted... what? Recognition? Validation? Someone to look at me and see past the scars to the person I'd been before? Or maybe I just wanted him to keep looking at me the way he was right now, like I mattered. Why are you really here? I asked instead. You could have sent guards to drag me to the palace. Why come yourself? Liam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because when I saw your face that night, when I finally understood who you were, all I could think was, she's real. 3 years of searching, of wondering, of hoping, and yet you were real. And then I ran. Yes. And I let you, because I saw the fear in your eyes, and I knew I'd caused it. Knew I'd exposed you when you'd clearly spent years trying to stay hidden. He ran a hand through his dark hair, and I noticed how tired he looked up close. How the shadows under his eyes spoke of more than just a few sleepless nights. I've made a lot of mistakes as king, Clara, but letting you run without explanation, without making sure you understood why I reacted the way I did, that might be my biggest regret. Why did you react that way? You gasped. Everyone heard it. Because I finally found you. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because I've been searching for so long, I'd started to think you might not exist. That maybe I'd built up some fantasy in my head, and then there you were, and you were... He trailed off, his eyes on my face, on my scars. Hideous? I supplied bitterly. Extraordinary. The word washed over me. I waited for him to laugh, to take it back, but he just stood there, looking at me with those silver eyes, and I couldn't find any deception in them. "I don't understand," I whispered. "That's my fault too. I came here tonight to explain, but I realize now that words probably won't be enough." He took a breath. "Clara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that?" I nodded warily. "Why did you come to the claiming? If you've been hiding, why show up to an event where you knew you'd be seen?" "It's the law. All unmated Omegas have to attend." "The law is rarely enforced, especially in recent years. You could have skipped it, and no one would have noticed." He was right, and we both knew it. I'd told myself I was going to fulfill my legal obligation, but the truth was more complicated. The truth was that some small, broken part of me had wanted to see if anyone would look twice at a scarred Omega in a mask, had wanted to test whether I could still pass for normal, even for one night. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "Maybe I was tired of hiding. Maybe I thought—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Maybe you thought you deserved to be seen," Liam said quietly. The words cracked something open inside me, something I'd kept locked tight for 3 years. I felt tears prickling at my eyes and blinked them back furiously. "Clara." He was closer now, close enough to touch. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. The council is pressuring me to choose a mate, to produce an heir and stabilize the succession. After the Northern Summit disaster and the failed trade agreements, my political capital is nearly gone. They're talking about calling for a vote of no confidence." My stomach dropped. "So you need a propaganda piece. The hero Omega, grateful to her king, helping restore his image." His jaw tightened. "That's what my advisors said. That claiming you publicly would remind people why they supported me in the first place. That it would show I honor those who serve the realm. That it would give me the popular support I need to counter the council's opposition." "And you agreed?" "I told them to go to hell." That stopped me. "What?" "I told them that I wouldn't use you as a political tool. That if I was going to court you, it would be because I wanted to, not because my crown required it." He met my eyes. "But I'd be lying if I said the timing wasn't convenient. And I'd be lying if I said it wouldn't help my position considerably if you agreed to be seen with me." At least he was honest. That was something. How many kings would admit to their political calculations so plainly? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You deserve to know exactly what you'd be walking into. If you agree to see me, the council will assume it's a political maneuver. The court will gossip. People will say I'm using you or that you're using me. It won't be easy. And if I say no, then I'll leave and you'll never see me again. I'll make sure the notices come down, that you're left in peace." His voice was steady, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Loss, maybe, or resignation. "I won't force this, Clara." Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to send him away, to go back to my quiet life, to avoid the spotlight and the scrutiny and the inevitable pain when this all fell apart. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at me when he removed my mask. That gasp that everyone had heard. I'd assumed it was shock or pity. But what if he really had seen me, and not just my scars? "I need time to think," I said finally. Liam nodded slowly. "How much time?" "I don't know. A few days, a week. Take as long as you need." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small card, placing it on the table between us. "This is a private address, not the palace. If you want to talk, or if you decide you want to try, send word there. I'll come." He moved toward the door, and I felt a strange panic rising in my chest. This was what I'd wanted. For him to leave, to give me space. So why did it feel like something precious was slipping through my fingers? "Liam." His name felt foreign on my tongue. He turned back. "Yes?" "That night, the fire. Your sister, is she okay? Something softened in his face. She's wonderful. Brilliant, actually. She's studying medicine now. Says she wants to help people the way someone once helped her. He paused. She'd like to meet you someday, if you're willing. I nodded, not trusting my voice. After he left, I stood in the center of Pippa's small apartment, staring at the card he'd left behind. Expensive paper, no royal seal, just an address in the merchant's quarter and a single initial. L. Pippa emerged from her bedroom cautiously. So, that was the king. He wants to court you. Yeah. But you're not sure if you can trust him? I looked at my friend. This woman who'd taken me in when I had nowhere else to go, who'd never once asked about my scars or my past, who'd just accepted me exactly as I was. I want to, I admitted. That's what scares me. I want to trust him so badly that I'm afraid I'll ignore all the warning signs, that I'll let myself believe this is real when it's really just politics. Pippa crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. Then don't decide now. Figure out what you really want, not what you think you should want. But as I lay awake that night, I realized the problem wasn't figuring out what I wanted. The problem was that I already knew. I wanted him to look at me again the way he had in that apartment, like I mattered, like I was extraordinary, and that terrified me more than any fire ever had. I waited 5 days before I sent the message. The message was simple. I want to talk. Tomorrow evening? His response came within an hour. I'll be there. The address he'd given me turned out to be a small townhouse tucked between a bookshop and a tailor's workshop. Respectable, but not ostentatious. The kind of place a wealthy merchant might own, not a king. Liam answered the door himself, wearing civilian clothes again. No crown, no guards, no royal trappings. Just a man who looked cautiously hopeful. You came, he said, and I heard the relief in his voice. I almost didn't. What changed your mind? I stepped inside, taking in the cozy space. There was a fireplace with 2 worn armchairs positioned in front of it. Bookshelves lined with volumes that looked actually read, not just decorative. A small kitchen visible through an archway. It felt lived in. This place, I said instead of answering his question. Is it yours? It was my mother's. She bought it years before she married my father, said she wanted somewhere she could escape to when court life became too suffocating. He gestured to the armchairs. She left it to me. I come here when I need to think. I sat, and he took the chair across from me, close enough to talk, but far enough to not feel crowding. That small courtesy didn't go unnoticed. I've been thinking about what you said, I began, about how having me publicly at your side would help your image. Clara, let me finish. I took a breath. I understand politics. I understand that nothing happens in a vacuum, especially not for kings, and I understand that you're in a difficult position. But I need to know if there's more to this than politics, because I struggled to find the words. I can't be someone's convenient solution. I can't be the hero, Omega, trotted out to win public sympathy, while you're actually courting someone more suitable behind closed doors. Liam leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes intense on mine. I'm not courting anyone else. I haven't been interested in anyone for 3 years. Because you've been searching for me? Yes, but not because I wanted to use you, Clara. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as nervous. My advisors think I'm obsessed. Maybe they're right. I've spent years wondering about the Omega who saved my sister, who was so brave and so broken that she couldn't even stay to be thanked. I wasn't brave, I said quietly. I was terrified. Brave people usually are. That's what makes it brave. He held my gaze. I want to know you, Clara, not the hero Omega, not the political asset. You, the woman who paints masks with gold filigree, Who works as a transcriptionist because it's quiet? Who ran from the claiming because she couldn't bear to be seen? Why do you care? The question came out raw. You're the king. You could have anyone. When I look at you, I see someone who understands what it's like to carry scars that nobody else can see. His voice dropped lower. My father was a brutal man, Clara. He believed in the old ways, in keeping Omegas subservient, in ruling through fear. When I took the throne and started making changes, half the realm celebrated, and half wanted me dead. The assassination attempt at the sanctuary, that wasn't the first. It wasn't even the fifth. I'd known he'd had enemies, but hearing him say it so plainly made my chest tight. I walk through the palace every day knowing that some of the people who smile at me are the same ones who sent assassins after my sister, knowing that my own council barely tolerates me, knowing that one wrong move could undo everything I've tried to build. He met my eyes. So, yes, claiming you publicly would help my image. But that's not why I want you. Then why? You're the first person who's looked at me and seen past the crown. You ran from me even though I'm the king, which means you're either very brave or very foolish, and I suspect it's both. When I saw your face that night, all I could think was that someone who'd survived what you survived deserved to be looked at with awe, not pity. The words hung in the air between us, and I couldn't breathe. Could only feel the way my heart was pounding against my ribs. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. How to trust this? Then let me prove it. He extended his hand across the space between our chairs. Let me court you properly. No public appearances, no political theater, just us, getting to know each other. And if at any point you decide this isn't real, that I'm using you or that you can't trust me, you can walk away. Just give me a chance. I stared at his outstretched hand, at the calluses on his palm that spoke of sword practice, at the scars on his knuckles that he'd probably earned in battle, at the vulnerability in his silver eyes that told me this mattered to him far more than he wanted to admit. I thought about spending the rest of my life hiding, thought about the quiet, small existence I'd built, the one where nobody saw me, but nobody hurt me either. Thought about being safe and alone, and slowly calcifying into someone who'd forgotten how to take risks. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not the mate bond, that would take more than a touch, but something just as significant. A choice. A door opening. Okay, I said, but I have conditions. A smile tugged at his mouth. I wouldn't expect anything less. No public appearances until I'm ready. No using me for political gain without asking me first. And if I find out you're lying to me about anything significant, I walk and you don't follow. Agreed. And one more thing. Name it. I met his eyes. You have to promise to be honest with me. About the politics, about the council, about what you're risking by pursuing this. I need to know what I'm walking into. I promise. He squeezed my hand gently. Ask me anything. So I did. We talked for hours that night about the Northern Summit disaster where his diplomatic overtures had been rejected publicly, about the coastal trade agreement that had fallen apart when the merchant lords decided they didn't trust his reforms, about how the council was circling like wolves, waiting for one more failure to justify removing him from power. They want someone traditional, Liam explained, his hand still holding mine. Someone who'll reverse the Omega rights legislation, who'll go back to the old ways. They're using my lack of an heir as leverage, saying I'm unfit to rule if I can't even secure the succession. How much time do you have? Until the autumn equinox. 3 months from now. If I don't present a chosen mate by then, the council can call for a vote of no confidence. His jaw tightened. They're already gathering support. I'd need something dramatic to shift public opinion back in my favor. Something like the hero Omega, I said quietly. Yes. He didn't deny it, and I respected him for that. But Clara, I meant what I said. I won't use this unless you agree to it. If you want to stay hidden, if you want this to remain private, I'll find another way. There is no other way, I said. You just told me you're out of political capital and time. Finding another way isn't an option. Then I'll lose the throne. The certainty in his voice shocked me. You'd give up your crown rather than use me? I've spent 3 years trying to build a better realm for people like you. For Omegas who deserve autonomy, who deserve to be seen as people instead of property. If achieving that goal means becoming the kind of man and who uses vulnerable people for political gain, then I've already lost. He lifted my hand, his thumb brushing across my scarred knuckles. I'd rather lose the crown with my integrity intact than keep it and lose myself. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but I'd spent years learning to trust my own instincts, and my instincts were screaming that this was too good to be true, that there had to be something he wasn't telling me. What happens if you lose the throne? I asked. Who takes over? Probably my cousin, Lord Garrett. He's the council's favorite, traditional values, strong military background, no interest in reform. He'd undo everything I've accomplished within a month. And the Omegas who've gained rights under your rule? They'd lose them. His voice was flat. The sanctuary protections, the legal autonomy, the right to refuse unwanted bonds, all of it would disappear. I thought about the Omegas I'd known at Moonrise Sanctuary, the ones who'd fled abusive pacts, who'd finally found safety under Liam's reforms. The thought of them losing those protections made my stomach turn. Then we can't let that happen, I said. Liam's eyes widened. Clara, I'm not saying I'm ready for public appearances. I'm not saying I trust you completely yet. But I'm saying that if 3 months from now, if this is real and you need me to stand beside you to keep the council from destroying everything you've built, then I'll do it. I squeezed his hand. Not because I'm your tool, because I'm choosing to fight for something that matters. Something fierce and bright kindled in his silver eyes. You're extraordinary, he said again, and this time I almost believed him. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. Liam would come to the townhouse in the evenings, and we'd talk. He told me about growing up under his father's brutal rule, about watching Omegas treated as property, and being powerless to stop it. I told him about my life before the fire, about working at the sanctuary, about the nightmares I still had. We didn't touch beyond holding hands. We didn't kiss. It felt too fast, too dangerous, too much like surrendering before I fully understood what I was surrendering to. But I really wanted to. I wanted it every time he looked at me like I'd said something clever. Every time he laughed at one of my dry observations about palace politics. Every time he touched my scarred hand without flinching. Like the ruined skin was just another part of me, and not something to be pitied or ignored. Pippa noticed, of course. You're falling for him, she said one morning over tea. I'm not. Clara, you smile every time his name comes up. You spend hours getting ready before you see him. You're falling for him. Even if I am, I said quietly, that doesn't mean it's real. That doesn't mean he actually wants me, or that this isn't just elaborate manipulation. Has he asked you for anything? Pressured you for public appearances? Tried to use the connection? No. Then maybe he's telling the truth. She reached across the table and took my hand. I know you're scared. I know trusting people hasn't worked out well for you in the past. But Clara, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to take the risk. I wanted to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but before I could, there was a knock at the door. It was too early for Liam. He never came before evening. My heart started racing as Pippa went to answer it. A woman stood in the hallway. Young, maybe 20, with dark hair and warm brown eyes. She was dressed simply but well, and there was something familiar about her face that I couldn't place. Until she smiled. You saved my life, she said quietly. I've been waiting 3 years to say thank you. Liam's sister. Her name was Rosalind, and she had her brother's intensity but a gentler warmth beneath it. She came in at my stunned invitation and sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap. I'm sorry to come unannounced, she said. Liam doesn't know I'm here. He'd probably be furious if he found out, actually. He's been very protective of your privacy. Then why did you come? My voice came out rougher than I intended. I needed to see you, to thank you properly, and to tell you. She hesitated. To tell you that whatever you think my brother's motives are, I promise you they're genuine. You can't know that. I can, actually. I've watched him search for you for 3 years. I've seen him turn down every Omega the Council presented, every political match they suggested. I've heard him wake up from nightmares about the fire, about not being able to find you in time to thank you. Rosalind's eyes were intense on mine. My brother is a lot of things, stubborn, intense, sometimes infuriatingly noble. But he's not a liar, and he's not a manipulator. Even good kings have to make political calculations. Yes, but Liam draws a line at using people he cares about. Our father didn't have that line, and it destroyed him from the inside. Liam swore he'd never become that. She leaned forward. Clara, I understand why you're looking for the catch, but I'm asking you to trust that sometimes people are exactly who they say they are. After she left, I sat in Pippa's apartment for a long time, thinking about trust and risk and the difference between caution and cowardice. That evening, when Liam arrived at the townhouse, I was already waiting. I met your sister today, I said as he stepped inside. He went very still. She came to see you? She wanted to thank me, and to vouch for you. I watched his face carefully. Were you ever going to tell me she wanted to meet? Eventually, when I thought you were ready. I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel obligated. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I should have asked you first. She's lovely, I said. And she clearly adores you. The feeling is mutual. His voice softened. She's the only family I have left. When I thought I'd lost her in that fire. He trailed off, his throat working. I made a decision. One I'd been circling for weeks, too afraid to commit to until now. I crossed the space between us and reached up, touching his face gently. He froze, his breath catching, as my fingers traced the scar on his eyebrow. Where did you get this? I asked softly. Training accident when I was 12. My father's weapons master said I wasn't fast enough. His eyes were locked on mine. Clara, I want to try, I said. Not just careful conversations and held hands. I want to know what this could be. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He kissed me then, slow and careful and achingly tender, like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking. His hands came up to cup my face, his thumbs gentle on my scarred cheek, and I realized he was trembling. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you at the claiming. Even with the mask on? Especially with the mask on. You looked terrified and defiant at the same time, and all I could think was that I needed to know you. I kissed him again, deeper this time, and felt his sharp intake of breath. Felt the way his hands tightened on my waist. Felt the Omega part of my brain purring with satisfaction at the confirmation that yes, this Alpha wanted me. We didn't go further than kissing that night. But it was enough. It was hope. The next 2 months passed in a blur of stolen evenings and growing intimacy. Liam taught me about palace politics, preparing me for what I'd face if we went public. I taught him about the lives of Omegas in the sanctuary system, the realities his reforms were trying to address. We argued sometimes, about policy, about his tendency to shoulder every burden himself, about my instinct to run when things got too intense. But we always came back together, and each time the bond between us grew stronger, Not the mate bond. That required a claiming bite, a ritual we both agreed we weren't ready for. But something just as powerful, something built on trust. And the slow revelation of two scarred people learning to be vulnerable with each other. Liam never mentioned the approaching deadline, but I could see the tension building in him, the weight of knowing his time was running out. 2 weeks before the autumn equinox, I made my decision. I want to do it, I told him one evening. I want to stand with you publicly. I want to help you keep the throne. He went very still. Clara, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Not because you asked, but because I believe in what you're trying to do. Because I believe in you. I took his hands. And because I want everyone to know that you're mine. The smile that broke across his face was incandescent. Say that again. You're mine, I repeated, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and for the first time since the fire, I felt truly seen, truly wanted, truly whole. We planned it carefully. A public appearance at the autumn equinox celebration. I would stand beside him as his chosen mate, not yet bonded, but clearly claimed. The hero Omega and the reformer king, united. It would be a spectacle, a statement, a calculated political move that also happened to be true. The night before the celebration, I stood in front of the mirror in the townhouse, studying my reflection. I'd stopped wearing the mask weeks ago when I was alone with Liam, but tomorrow I'd be facing the entire court. Everyone would see. You don't have to do this, Liam said softly from behind me. We can find another way. There is no other way, I said, and I'm not afraid anymore. It was a lie. I was terrified, but I was also ready. The autumn equinox celebration was, held in the palace's grand courtyard, open to the public. Thousands of people crowded the space, all of them waiting to see if their controversial king would finally present a mate. I wore a simple dress in deep blue, no mask, no attempt to hide my scars. Pippa had helped me prepare, her hands steady as she braided my hair. Roslyn had sent flowers that morning with a note. You're going to be magnificent. Liam found me in the preparation room, resplendent in his formal regalia. The crown sat on his dark hair, the royal coat was perfectly tailored, but it was the look in his eyes when he saw me that made my breath catch. You're stunning, he said. I'm terrified. Good, so am I. He offered his arm. Ready? I took it. No, but let's do it anyway. We walked out together into the sunlight and noise and expectations of thousands of people. I felt every eye on me, felt the moment they registered my scars, felt the ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. But I kept my chin up, kept my hand steady on Liam's arm, kept walking. He led me to the raised platform where the council waited, their expressions ranging from shocked to furious, to carefully neutral. This was the moment. This was where he would present me, where I would be confirmed as his chosen mate, where the political game would shift in his favor or fall apart completely. Liam turned to face the crowd, his hand finding mine. 3 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, there was a fire at the Moonrise Sanctuary. 12 people were inside. 8 survived because of one Omega's courage. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. That Omega pulled my sister from the flames. She saved children and elders, and everyone she could reach, even as her own skin burned. She was a hero. His hand tightened on mine. And then, she disappeared. I could feel the weight of thousands of stares, but I didn't look away. I've spent 3 years searching for her. 3 years wondering if I'd ever get the chance to thank her, to honor her, to know her. He turned to me, his silver eyes intense. And when I finally found her, I discovered something I hadn't expected. What's that? I asked softly, even though we hadn't rehearsed this part, that I didn't just want to thank her. I wanted to stand beside her, to learn from her courage, to build a life with her. He raised our joined hands. This is Clara, the Omega who saved my sister, the woman I choose as my mate, and I'm asking her in front of all of you to choose me in return. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some gasping, some clearly furious. The council looked like they'd been struck by lightning, but all I could see was Liam, looking at me with such naked hope and vulnerability that it cracked something open in my chest. "Yeah," I said clearly, my voice carrying. "I choose you." He kissed me then, in front of thousands of witnesses, and the crowd's roar was deafening. We'd done it. Shifted the narrative. Claimed each other publicly in a way that was both politically brilliant and emotionally true. I should have felt triumphant, relieved, victorious. Instead, as the celebration continued around us, as people pressed forward to offer congratulations, and the council retreated in stony fury, I felt a creeping unease I couldn't quite name. The next week was a blur of attention and appearances. Everywhere we went, people stared. Some with admiration, some with curiosity, many with the kind of sentiment that made me want to hide. Poor, scarred Omega. So grateful to have caught a king. How noble of him to choose her despite her disfigurement. Liam's political situation improved dramatically. The hero Omega narrative worked exactly as his advisors had predicted. Public support swung back in his favor. The council's vote of no confidence never materialized. Everything was going according to plan. So why did I feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop? It happened 3 weeks after the autumn equinox celebration. I was in the townhouse, waiting for Liam as usual, when I heard voices in the hallway outside. Not Liam's voice, someone else's. Curiosity drew me to the door. I pressed my ear against it, knowing I shouldn't eavesdrop, but unable to stop myself.
"Brilliant move, Your Majesty. The council is in disarray. Your approval ratings are the highest they've been in a year."
That was Lord Peter, one of Liam's senior advisors. I recognized his oily tone.
"The people love the story. The scarred hero Omega and the king who honored her. It's romantic. It's political gold."
Another voice, female this time, Lady Ashton, the communications minister.
"We should maximize this momentum. Public appearances at the children's hospital, perhaps.
Show her interacting with Omegas who benefit from your reforms. Really drive home the narrative." My stomach turned to ice. "No." That was Liam's voice, firm. "Clara isn't a prop for photo opportunities." "With respect, Your Majesty, that's exactly what she is." Peter's voice was matter-of-fact. "You chose her for the political advantage. We all know it. She knows it. So why pretend otherwise?" "Because it's not pretense," Liam snapped. "I care about her." "Of course you do. That's what makes it work so well. The genuine affection adds authenticity to the political theater." Lady Ashton sounded pleased. "But let's not lose sight of why this relationship exists. You needed to secure your throne. She provided the means. It's a transaction that benefits everyone." "It's not a transaction. Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but we both know you wouldn't have pursued this if the political timing hadn't been perfect. Yes, you've been searching for the hero Omega. Yes, you clearly find her compelling. But would you have claimed her publicly if your crown wasn't at stake? Would you have moved this fast if you didn't need the political advantage?" The silence that followed was crushing. "That's what I thought," Pierre said softly. "So let's not pretend this is just a love story. You needed her to save your throne. She agreed to help. Now we need to maximize the advantage while the public sentiment is hot." "Schedule the hospital visit," Liam said finally, his voice flat. but I want to discuss it with Clara first." "Of course, Your Majesty." Their footsteps retreated down the hall. I stood frozen by the door, my heart hammering. Would you have claimed her publicly if your crown wasn't at stake? Would you have moved this fast if you didn't need the political advantage? And Liam hadn't answered, hadn't denied it. He'd just been silent. I was still standing there when he opened the door 10 minutes later. He froze when he saw my face. "Clara, I didn't know you were... How much did you hear?" "Enough." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Enough to know that your advisors think I'm a political prop, and you didn't correct them." "It's not like that, isn't it?" I finally looked at him. "Be honest with me, Liam. If your crown hadn't been at stake, would you have pursued me this fast? Would you have claimed me publicly after only a few months?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The hesitation was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said, echoing Peter's words. "Clara, please, let me explain." "No. I need you to answer one question, and I need you to be completely honest." I met his eyes. "Did you pursue me because you wanted me, or because you needed me politically?" "Both," he said finally, and at least he had the decency to look pained. "Clara, I won't lie to you. The timing was perfect. Having you beside me did exactly what my advisors predicted. It shifted public opinion, stabilized my position, gave me the leverage I needed with the council. So I'm convenient." "No. You're necessary. There's a difference." He took a step toward me, his voice urgent. "Clara, I care about you. What we have is real. But I also can't pretend that my crown wasn't at stake. My sister's safety, the Omega reforms, everything I've worked for. It all depended on me securing my position. And yes, choosing you publicly helped with that. But that doesn't make my feelings for you any less genuine." How am I supposed to know that? The words came out raw. How am I supposed to trust that this is real, and not just you being a very good actor playing a very long game? Because I could have lied just now, could have said the politics didn't matter, could have fed you a romantic fantasy. But I didn't, because you deserve honesty even when it's complicated. He was right. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it just made everything more confusing. "I need time," I said. "I need to think." Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Whatever you need. But Clara, please believe me when I say that the politics might have brought us together. But they're not what makes me want to keep you." After he left, I sat in the townhouse for a long time, my mind spinning. He'd been honest about the political calculations, about the timing, about how his need for political stability had accelerated our relationship. That honesty should have meant something. But I couldn't stop hearing Peter's words. You needed her to save your throne. She agreed to help. I thought about the past months. The careful courtship, the vulnerability he'd shown me, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Either he was the best liar I'd ever met, or he genuinely cared. But how was I supposed to know which? I spent 3 days thinking. 3 days of Pippa trying to offer advice, of a Rosalind sending concerned messages, of Liam respecting my space, even though I could feel his worry like a physical weight. On the 3rd day, I realized something. I was doing it again. Running at the first sign of complication. Looking for reasons to push away someone who'd been nothing but honest with me, even when that honesty was uncomfortable. Liam had never promised me that politics didn't matter. He'd never pretended that his crown wasn't a factor in our relationship. He'd been upfront about the political reality from the beginning. What he had promised was honesty, and he'd kept that promise, even when the truth made him look bad. I found him in the townhouse that evening, pacing in front of the fireplace like a caged animal. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Clara." He crossed the room to meet me. "Are you?" "I'm angry," I said. "I'm angry that I can't have a relationship without wondering if I'm just a convenient solution. I'm angry that your advisors see me as a prop, and you didn't defend me strongly enough." His face fell. "I understand. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you." "I'm not finished." I took a breath. "I'm angry about all of that. But I'm also trying to be rational, trying to separate what's real from what's convenient. And the truth is, I don't know if I can ever be completely sure that your feelings aren't tied up in political necessity." "Clara, but I also don't know if it matters." That stopped him cold. "What?" "You told me once that you'd rather lose the crown than use me as a political tool. You proved that by being honest when you could have lied. You've been upfront, even when it made you look manipulative." I met his eyes. "So maybe the question isn't whether politics played a role in bringing us together. Maybe the question is whether I trust you enough to believe that what we have is real, despite the complications." "Do you?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm trying to. I'm choosing to try. Not because I'm sure, not because I have all the answers, but because I think you're worth the risk." His hands came up to cup my face, trembling slightly. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." I kissed him, soft and sure. "On one condition. Anything. You defend me. When your advisors talk about me like I'm a tool, when people treat me like I'm just the scarred Omega who got lucky, you stand up for me. Not because it's politically expedient, but because I matter to you. Can you do that?" "Yes. I should have done it from the beginning. I'm sorry." He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not certainty. I might never have that. But trust. The fragile, hard-won kind that you build brick by brick with someone who's brave enough to be honest, even when it hurts. Months later, I stood in the palace's private chapel, wearing a simple white dress and no mask. Liam stood across from me in his formal regalia, his silver eyes bright with emotion. We'd decided on a private bonding ceremony. Just us, Rosalind, Pippa, and the priestess. No political theater, no public spectacle. Just two people choosing each other in the most permanent way possible. "Are you sure?" Liam asked softly, even though we'd had this conversation a dozen times. "I'm terrified," I admitted, "but I'm sure." The bonding bite was quick and sharp, his teeth breaking the skin at the juncture of my neck and shoulder. I felt the Omega bond snap into place like a rubber band pulled taut and suddenly released. Felt the rush of his emotions flooding into me. Love, relief, possessive satisfaction, and underneath it all, a bone-deep contentment that matched my own. When it was done, when the bond was sealed and permanent, he rested his forehead against mine. "Mine," he whispered. "Yours," I agreed. "And you're mine." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had complications ahead. The council would continue to be a problem. There would be more challenges, more moments when I'd wonder if the politics overshadowed the personal. The scars on my face would never fully fade, and neither would the nightmares from the fire. But we'd face it together, honestly, messily, with our eyes open to reality and our hands clasped tight. And if that wasn't a happy ending, it was at least a beginning. A real one. A kind worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. And if you enjoyed my story, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.